Hello, everyone. I'm Karen Putz here. Welcome to People with Passion. And today with me is Tanith Carey. And we met because she wrote a brilliant article, and it just popped up in my news feed. And after I read the article, I was like, oh my gosh, wow. She had taught me something in the article that I had never heard about before, but I could totally identify with it. And we're going to find out about that in just a minute. So welcome to People with Passion.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about you for people
Well,
who know you.
That's true. Well, I am an author and a journalist, and I tend to write a lot on parenting and psychology. And my latest book is my first general psychology book about the state of anhedonia, which I identified when I felt it, but didn't realize there was a name for it. And then because I'm a very curious person, I went in search of what this could be. And I realized there was a great body of research out there that was known to clinicians and neuroscientists and psychiatrists, but yet hadn't been available to the general public. And my point in the book is that we talk a lot about despair and depression at one end, and we talk about happiness and joy at the other, but like, why aren't we talking about the middle space in between, where we can feel blah, we can feel we're not reaching our potential, we maybe feel like we're emotionally flatlining or not feeling the full range of emotion, or just not really able to enter into the joy of an occasion. Maybe we feel like an outsider, or you could even have a fear of happiness, which is something I didn't know until I discovered it through my interviews and my search for the research in the book. So there can be many ways of feeling blah, many reasons. And I think what I want to say in this book is that we don't have to accept this as the status quo. You know, if we are not reaching our potential, we are not enjoying life, then that is something to address. It's not that I'm pathologizing it, but I am helping to bring the name out so that people can identify it, realize what their reasons are, and then hopefully do things that they can address it.
I think it's absolutely amazing that it has been well known in the mental health field, and the rest of us are feeling blah and not knowing that it's considered a medical condition. Can you grab the book real quick and show us the cover real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so this is the book, Feeling Blah. And I think it's a breakthrough book because honestly, in my years of coaching, you know, I've had clients come to me, you know, I'm just feeling blah. I don't know what my passion is. I don't feel passionate anymore. And I myself have been going through that, not realizing what it was, what was going on with me. Because I'm normally a very passionate person. There's things that I'm passionate about. And I have just been going through this period of, I know I'm not depressed, but I know I'm not living at my highest level of joy and happiness either. What's going on?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and that's where you come in.
That's a very good point. I mean, in the book, there are many different reasons for blah, and each person has their own combination. So it could be one or two different things. I mean, it could be biological. I mean, hormones. I know when I had it, I didn't realize that hormones were playing a part. As I was approaching menopause, I didn't realize that the drop off in the estrogen has a very strong effect on dopamine and serotonin. I didn't realize that my dopamine levels were being changed by my falling estrogen levels. I had no idea. You know, I also didn't realize as I got older that estrogen also buffers the effect of cortisol. So that as it was, instead of protecting me from the cortisol, I felt more exposed. So I was feeling more stressed, I was feeling more anxious. And anxiety is one of the main enemies of joy. So I was feeling anxious the whole time. It's very difficult to be in the moment when you're anxious. So yeah, I mean, you know, there's that. I mean, also blah can also be a symptom of various different illnesses. I mean, it's now, anhedonia is now seen as one of the symptoms of long COVID, because the effect of the brain on the brain system is to cause, the brain reward system, there can get areas which are affected by inflammation as the body's immune system tries to fight back. And that can also affect the brain's immune system, the brain's reward system, the mesolimbic reward pathway. So who knew that? I mean, other illnesses like diabetes, Lyme's disease, Anything that really triggers a very strong immune system reaction can also lead to blah. Stress, we've already talked about, but particularly burnouts, because basically cortisol dampens down the feel-good hormones like serotonin and dopamine so that you can just be completely overloaded. And also we live in a very high stress environment where we're kind of, the thing about cortisol is that once it's spiked very high, it stays in our system for an hour because that's its function is to keep us alive. But if we spike dopamine, it only stays in our system for 5 minutes. So when we're living in a society where we're facing constant sort of like cortisol spikes, like the kind of the news agenda, social media, the pressures of other people who might be going through their own problems, which just seems to be getting worse and worse, money struggles, fears about world events, all those kind of things, then we obviously cortisol is winning out, and like our reward chemicals are getting squished. So this book is all about awareness of that and just saying like, yeah, modern life is tough. Okay. Okay, we have our needs met more easily than we ever have before. But we also, the good news is we also know more about the neuroscience of joy than we ever have before, because we have things like fMRI scanners. We can see how emotion is made in the brain. So it's time to stop this kind of mental health free fall, to use this knowledge, to assimilate it into our lives, and then to push back so we can start to feel better than we do now, because a lot of us are not feeling great.
Wow, you packed a lot in a very
Sorry.
short time. And I love it. I absolutely love it, because I think we're not talking enough about it. That's what I think. I think, especially with social media, when you're scrolling through social media and you see everybody else taking these trips, having fun, making money. And then if you're struggling or if you're feeling blah, that social media just adds on to it. So that's
It does.
really interesting. And then the long COVID that you mentioned, I'm seeing more and more of that among my friends. So it's really interesting that has an effect as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And unrecognized. I mean, in the UK, we've had a lot of people who've struggled to get back to work. Like they've lost a lot of motivation. And I think this could be the missing piece, I mean, it's a really big picture, because like obesity is also an inflammatory disease. So what you're having is like, no wonder people can't find the motivation to do something about that, because if they have anhedonia, their reward system is offline, So this is like connecting all the dots. I think that's just really, it's like, how come we're not talking about this?
For me, I've been struggling so much with weight, and it was just kind of like an aha for me. And now I have some tools to figure out how to address it, thanks to you. So thank you for that. I'm switching gears just a little bit. You obviously have a passion for writing and a passion for communicating. When you think of that word passion, what does it mean to you, and how do you define it?
Absolutely. I think passion is so important. So one thing I write about the book, and I write in all my books whenever I can, is the concept of spark. So this is a concept which actually originally came out of the US, which is the idea that every single child or young person has a spark. A spark is something that they are naturally drawn to. They might find it easier than others. They can become completely absorbed by. It's something that they would do even if grown-ups didn't interrupt them or get involved or encourage them. It's just something that they have. And like, if you look at the research, like every child has one of these sparks, or they might have a couple. So it could be something like being a good listener. It could be caring for animals. It could be growing plants. It could be like singing. It could be art. It could be, making, sewing, anything. But basically what I think is really important is that like we allow our young people to identify and grow these sparks and give them importance. And I was just saying before, actually, like maybe, and I just kind of, it's almost like this spark has been squeezed out of our children, because we put them in these really competitive education systems where it's all about grades, it's all about college admissions, it's all about building your CV. Like hobbies or sparks are just seen as something that are kind of luxuries, whereas I think we should be allowing young people, or we should know, not allowing, we should be showing them how they can integrate their passions into their lives, not as an add-on, but as an integral part of their life, to kind of make them feel fulfilled and creative. So yeah, for me, you know, that's really interesting. If I think about my own spark, like when I was little, I was like 7 or 8, I do projects. I was already very curious. I'd like do these scrapbooks, and I'd sit alone for hours in my room just making these little books, you know. And then I look back on that, I'm like, yeah, that was my spark. You know, I love to communicate, I love to make things, I'm so passionate about psychology as well. And I there's so much amazing research done by so many great researchers, but like not enough of it is in the public domain where we can use it. So my other passion is just to bring this together so that we can use it to improve our lives, because otherwise it just gets stuck in the papers, you know, it's no use there. So yeah, that's my passion.
And you came alive when you said that, so I can see that. How can you? Yeah. I'm assuming
I was in the flow. You can see my dopamine was flowing. I was like,
you were in the flow. Yeah.
I was.
You had more books in you. Do you have more books that you plan to write?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. So I have another book coming out in January, actually, which is called What's My Teenager Thinking? So this is an add to another couple of books I've did called What's My Child Thinking and What's My Teenager Thinking? And what it does is, again, it brings all that research together. So for each age group, we bring 100 real life scenarios, and then we look at what the parents think, what the teenager thinks, or the child thinks, and we look at, we bring the child development, and then we bring the best evidence-based suggestions about how to deal with it. So it's highly practical. It makes the research digestible and usable. So yeah, I've got another book coming out like in that series. So it's called What's My Teenager Thinking? For parents of 8 to 12. Yeah, no, it's good.
Congratulations on that.
Thank
so
you.
Just going back to your book, because I just thought of something. So if somebody has been diagnosed with the blah, what is like 1 or 2 or 3 things that they could do when they, let's say they're reading your book and it's like an aha for them? What is some things what steps could they take?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll have to say it's different for everybody. So like what I do in the third part of the book is bring lots of different tools, and then you pick your toolkit, because it could be different depending what the cause is. I mean, for example, you know, does it relate back to childhood? For me, some of my stuff related back to childhood, whereby I grew up in a very chaotic family where I always thought it wasn't safe to be happy because it could be snatched away from me. So I then had to recognize that I felt uncomfortable when I felt joyful. And I had to learn to ground myself and notice that feeling. So if that's you, then that would be something you would learn to do. You would learn to ground yourself and notice that discomfort and that fear of joy. It would also, maybe you could do something with what you eat. I mean, there's an awful lot of evidence now that shows that what we eat it contributes heavily to our mood. If we're eating a lot of processed foods, that can like contribute to inflammation, which can also affect the reward system. It can also suppress the microbiota, which produce serotonin. So you could try some dietary shifts. You could try a method called behavioral activation, which is a very evidence-based response to anhedonia, in which, going back to the spark and the passion point, you remember what was it that I used to enjoy doing? Why isn't it making me feel good anymore? And what you do is like 5 minutes a day, even if you don't enjoy it initially, you keep doing it until the dopamine starts flowing again. And one very esteemed psychologist compared this to kind of the old-fashioned water pump. So you keep pumping the water, you keep doing the activity, and at first you don't feel anything, but then eventually the water comes up the spout and it starts to bring you back your passion and your joy. So there's so much stuff.
Love that. I absolutely love that. Excuse me. It reminds me of Zig Ziglar. He used to talk about that all the time, about how you have to pump and you have to pump and you have to prime the pump. So the same thing with your passion and your joy, you have to prime the pump so that you can invite passion and joy into your life. So I love that. Absolutely love that. So wrapping this up, if you could give a piece of advice to someone who thinks that, well, especially, I'm thinking mostly in midlife. who feels like, okay, I am too old, I am too disabled, I am too whatever it is, too, and thinks that they can't do something, what would you tell them to encourage them?
Yeah. So first of all, I would say, do not accept that status quo. You deserve better. You know, it's like life is like, we all deserve to flourish. We should not accept blah as a status quo. There are ways that you can get out of it once you understand how your reward system works, how joy is actually 3 things, not 1 thing, and you can start to feel that you have control over your happiness. Then you can start making steps in the right direction. I mean, one of the things I love to do in this book is like, so I spoke to some of America's top neuroscientists, and they explained how, you know, joy is not 1 thing, it's anticipation. So it's looking forward to something, it's appreciation, it's being in the moment, and it's remembering, so you want to do it again. So if you start sort of seeing joy as something that you can, is more within your power. Like, we talk a lot about, oh, how things should make me happy or life should make me happy, but we have to go out and make happiness ourselves, because life is hard, but and our brains are, there's a bit of a lag between what our brains were invented for and what we're using them for. So we have to use that neuroscience to push back. And, you know, it's often the little things as well. It's like, you know, I do a list in the book, which is one of my favorite bits, is where the 50 things that people around the world say makes them feel good. You know, it's like, it's slipping into a freshly made bed with fresh sheets. It's like spending a moment listening to your cat purring. You know, it's like kind of little by little, if you notice these and you sink into them and you don't rush off and you just allow yourself to appreciate them, and they add up, you know, they do add up bit by bit. Your dopamine and your happiness levels start to edge up, you know. So it's about, you know, appreciation, noticing. I mean, I don't want to say mindfulness because that's a bit of a cliche, but there's so many different things. It's like, it's talking to the person next to you on the bus, you know, like the evidence shows that actually the person appreciates that more than you imagine, and you come away feeling better. It's like doing the little things that will consciously change, give you that little kick, that little dopamine, whatever, but in a healthy way, not in a kind of false kind of like, you know, logging on to Netflix or buying something else, but just real life experiences that produce dopamine.
I absolutely love that 3 parts to joy. Because when I read that, I saw that on your social media. And when I read that, I thought, wow, that is so true. And it's very much a part of my coaching. And I didn't realize that, because that's
exactly
that I take people through. Yeah. Because in my book, Unwrapping Your Passion, passion into joy.
Yeah,
When we
absolutely.
get down to that, then we know what our passion is. Because we know what brings us joy. And we just have to tap into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that part. I really do.
So what I always do is, like, in the diary every week, I have something that I want to do that I look forward to that builds my dopamine. You know, it's just like a ritual like that can make a difference. That alone has made a massive difference for me. And I've started ticking things off that I've enjoyed, and I make a date with my partner to do it, or my girls. Like Friday, I'm going pottery painting with my girls. You know, we're looking forward to it. You know, art is a spark for 2 of my girls, and we're just gonna we're gonna look forward to it. We're gonna appreciate while we do it because we'll be together, and then we're gonna have something to show for it. You know, these are simple things, but like, unless we realize that blah is a thing that we can address, it will just continue living like this. No more.
That's so true. Wow, what a beautiful way to wrap up. I want to thank you for this interview and all this wisdom that you shared. And
thank you.
the link for your book is down below, and I really encourage you to grab that book. If you're feeling blah and you're not sure why, this book may have some answers for you. So thank you so much for sharing.
Not at all. Thank you for asking me. It's been lovely.